Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
In elementary school, in my mom's fun hands-on science class, we each got several beans, a wet paper towel, and a see-through plastic cup. After a few days, we could see our little beans opening up with tiny stem coming out of it. A few days later, we had sturdy little bean plants that we could take home and put in our garden to grow. Nothing's more satisfying than growing and harvesting your own food, especially if you're a 9-year-old who doesn't live on a farm. That's the picture that comes to mind when I read one of Jesus's verily, verily statements, which reminds us that this is the key life-changing concept we need to really pay attention to. He said, "Most assuredly I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain." This is almost a little one-liner parable because in an agrarian society, everyone knows what happens to a seed in the ground. They don't need their third-grade teacher to give them a seed, a cup, and a wet paper towel. But they do need Jesus, the master teacher, to point out that this is true in our lives as well. In Jesus' own life, he was about to die, yet he prefaces this truism with, "The hour has come that the Son of Man should be glorified." How does death and glorification go together? Only in God's reality. The people had just welcomed Jesus to Jerusalem as their king. That, on the surface, seemed like his glorification, but Jesus knew they'd actually just chosen him as their Passover lamb. The real glorification would only come after he submitted to the Father's will to die, because he would then be resurrected and ascend back to his throne in heaven with his earthly work complete. If he'd allowed them to crown him as their earthly king at that point instead of dying on the cross, his glory would have been limited to that place and that generation. It would have been a local thing, not touching the rest of the world. But by becoming the sacrifice that we needed, he would open up the way of salvation for the whole world in every generation. So he had to die. There was no other way. It's the same in our own lives. The condition for vibrant productivity is death of our own desires, setting aside our pitifully small hopes and dreams, and submitting to God's will, which is abundantly more than we could imagine. Jesus says this in a slightly different way in 5 other places. "He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it." When we put his kingdom first above our desires, even above our own life, he takes over and does amazing things. When we're focused on the spiritual instead of the physical self in this world, we can see that. And throughout his ministry, Jesus tried to get people to think spiritually instead of physically. When we seek God's kingdom first and die to self, we're preparing ourselves for eternity. There's so much more than what we can see here on earth. But giving up self is hard. It's something that we won't give up without a struggle. Our own interests, our own comfort, our own desires, they will easily take center stage if we let them. But unless we die to those things, we won't see God's glory and victory in our lives. And that's what we really want, to glorify God. How are you doing with your struggle against self? In what areas do you need to die, like that grain of wheat, in order to see the glory of God?
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through his word. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you can find in the description below. Thank you for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.